I served in the Marine Corps as a sniper from 2003 to 2007 and did 3 tours to Iraq. And I had 4 friends that I knew in 1 month commit suicide. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't confused. I got it, and I kind of envied it a little bit. Like that felt like a relief. And in my mind, sit there and watch my friends at his funeral, but knowing mine will be very similar. Whatever I'm having right now is unsustainable, right? I got to figure this out for my kids. I got to figure this out for my family. I got to figure this out for my unit. Like the guys need to hear about this. And so I had no idea what I was stepping into to use this in like a therapeutic sense. The overwhelming thing was I woke up and I felt like I'd been baptized. And it restructured my priorities around my kid and my wife, and that like that's the mission. Really, I was just spiraling and I didn't have any understanding of why. Uh, I I have a military background. I served in the Marine Corps as a sniper from 2003 to 2007 and did 3 tours to Iraq and then did some fire and EMS and then contracted for like 9 years over in Baghdad and Afghanistan and Kabul, and thought that I had got out, right? I thought I had made that transition to civilian life, but I had probably taken the off ramp with the least grade to it. Right? I was still, doing the same work with the same kind of people, and I didn't have to shave anymore, and thought that that made it different. And that was stupid. That was really naive. It was what it was. And so when we left Afghanistan, a lot came down on me all at the same time. I had gone to Colombia and done a Naked and Afraid challenge. And while I was in the jungle, the whole downfall of us exiting Afghanistan occurred. And when I got out, I found out we had left and I had lost my job, that the role of the agency wasn't even there anymore. And I thought that was really awesome blessing, and it was, but it was also a forced transition that I know that I needed, but I wasn't fully prepared for. And about 6 months after that of being home, I don't know that I had been home for 6 months in a very long time. I had done 20 total rotations overseas, and so it was a pretty steady um, cycle. And so yeah, about 6 months after that, I was in a pretty bad way, and I had 4 friends that I knew in 1 month commit suicide, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't confused. I got it, and I kind of envied it a little bit. Like that felt like a relief. It felt like, wow, that actually took a lot of courage to do because I don't think I could do it. But fuck, that sounds like whatever I'm having right now is unsustainable. And I knew it. And when I felt that shift, I also recognized that like that's new and that's a shift that scares me. And on, yeah. And so yeah, I had a friend that dropped a retreat in my lap and was like, dude, it's free, just go. Just try it. Talk to him, see if this is something that you're willing to try. And it was the same weekend as Kerr's funeral. And so I had to kind of make a choice. Do I do something for me? And then if it helps, come back and tell the guys? Or do I go there and attend the funeral, all of the emotional things that I'm going to go through with that? And in my mind, sit there and watch my friends at his funeral, but knowing mine will be very similar. And envisioning it anyway, I would have done that for sure. So that's kind of where I was when I first came to try this.
When you first arrived, what was going through your mind?
I was pretty nervous, honestly. I didn't have much experience with psychedelics. I had done a little bit of mushrooms with some friends in the fire service and hiked the park at night, and that was awesome. But very, very distracted during it, right? There was no introspection. It was let's see how cool everything looks. And yeah, it was entertaining, but not in any way the way that that's supposed to be used. And so I had no idea what I was stepping into to use this in like a therapeutic sense. But I was very nervous. Obviously, there's 50 years of propaganda to overcome in order to take this jump. But I felt like if I was going to tell people, like, hey, if this is the last rung on your ladder, fuck it, man. Go try, then I had at least better do it myself, and if it did work, I wanted to know. And then it would give me something to go back to my unit with because my units had a really big problem with this. And so attaching it to something greater than myself, right? I got to figure this out for my kids. I got to figure this out for my family. I got to figure this out for my unit. Like the guys need to hear about this and I might be able to spread some word, right? And so that was kind of my mindset and I knew that I needed to attach it to something bigger and so that's what I found. It's easy to endure your own suffering.
What was your first ceremony like?
They had a really big banquet hall, which is, I assume, where they held the wedding ceremonies. And so we all went in there and it was beautiful, big high vaulted ceilings and, stained glass type of stuff. Very pretty. Great for the sound, really good auditory echo and so we had a bunch of mats and we all laid down and it was it was very nice, very organized, very clean. Everyone had a bucket, everyone had a water bottle, everyone had a journal and a blanket and a pillow, and there was someone there to take, if you had to get up and pee, somebody walk you over there and they'll make your bed while you're gone and then come back, making you feel very taken care of. The medicine itself was served in these were actually synthetic. It wasn't natural psilocybin. It was 4-ACE DMT, I believe, or ACO. I can't recall. But so it was the equivalent of 5 grams of psilocybin. And so that was pretty easy to stomach. There was no nausea really. It was a pretty quick, straight up and intense experience. Um, and and it was great, man. I didn't have any like visions, but I had a lot of like the kaleidoscope, a lot of the beautiful colors, a lot of just kind of enjoying the show, really. And the music really drove the mood, right? They were very intentional with, they're going to have some happy songs and you're going to have some sad songs and you're going to have some intense songs and you're going to have some relaxing songs. And that purpose is to provide you with a full emotional release. So whatever you might be kind of holding on to, you get the experience to have that emotion come forward. And so that happened. I cried, I laughed, I did all the things, and it lasted for me about 3.5, 4 hours. And and I did it with a buddy, and so I felt much more comfortable. It's almost like going into the military on the buddy program. He was another sniper that was a friend of mine, and so yeah, I could look over and watch him doing his thing, and he's getting it, and I'm on mine, and I don't know, it helped to kind of have somebody to share it with too, that I knew personally.
Did you have to face anything difficult during your first experience?
Not my first one, no. The first one was kind of just allowing whatever to happen and telling myself like I'm not going to expect this to do anything per se, but let's just objectively have this experience and see what happens, right? Not to tie anything to it. I don't want to, because I don't want it to be a placebo and I go back to my unit and be like, guys, this was great. And they're like, and then 10 dudes come back and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, you convinced yourself that that was great. That was stupid. And I really didn't want that to happen. So I tried to really, like, this is the first one. I'm just going to get through it. I'm just going to see what happens. Can I process this? Can I relax in it and get something useful from it? And the answer was an overwhelming yes. So yeah, it was I will say like I shake a lot. I didn't understand why or know that that would be the way I would predominantly purge. I look like I'm having a seizure. And I've had like come over, hey, are you okay, man? Like, yeah, dude, just doing my dance. I don't know. You know? I just my legs, my stomach, my abdomen, a lot of almost like nervous jitters just being released, just constant for hours, and I was exhausted. But it didn't hurt. It wasn't unpleasant. It wasn't scary. I just kind of let it happen. And I had had some digestive problems in Afghanistan, and I don't know if maybe that was helping me with that, uh, but I don't have those issues anymore, right? I had got like 14 vaccines in one day before a deployment, and it wrecked my immune system completely. Anything I ate, I would have an allergic response to the point where I was having to live off of Amazon overseas, ordering beef jerky and oatmeal. So I don't know if that was related or not, but it did a lot. And yeah, the overwhelming thing was I woke up and I felt like I'd been baptized. The things that I could not allow my mind to go to, or I would break down crying and have just no control over it. I no longer had an emotional response to. They were there, they still existed, but I could think about them clearly now without breaking down. And that was a gift.
For that first experience, what shifted for you?
Um, it really brought me back to my family, right? Because I was feeling a huge sense of a loss of identity and purpose and real. I hadn't created any plan beyond where I was, and so I didn't see myself in anything, and it restructured my priorities around my kid and my wife, and that like that's the mission, right? I've been totally distracted with this identity that was a lobster pot overseas. It's not a bad it's not a bad life. You know, you're with the team, you get to kind of keep that camaraderie. You make really good money, you get to keep doing exciting, fun things, but there's no longevity, right? There's all you've always got to get out, and it's easy to not think about. It sneaks up on you though, especially around 40.
What were some changes that your family noticed?
Mm, there was a calmness initially that my wife especially noticed, and a, a a difference in how I was responding with my son and with her. At the time, I didn't know shit about integration. At the time, it was, spend some time meditating in the mornings and you'll, help regulate and stay off your phone. That's a big source of stress for people, but there wasn't a lot of guidance for what to do when I'm in a moment of chaos or when I'm in a moment of activation and I'm being triggered by my kid or by, a crowded area or, all the things that start to bubble up about it 6 months to a year after getting out of the service. I didn't understand it. So I was still dealing with it. And it lasted about 2 years, or about 6 months later, my wife went and had hers. She saw enough change in me, and we were going through some couples counseling, and individually, those two things wouldn't have probably worked, but together, it saved our marriage for sure.
What changed for her after her experience?
It allowed her to mourn the deployments. She had never done that. And she had always dropped me at the airport, sucked it up, and kept herself busy until I came home. And there was a specific song that had a harmonica in it, and it would come in and out of the song. And it was a pretty long song. It's like a 15-minute song. You know, some of these psychedelic playlists, right? And so every time that that harmonica would fade back in, it would initiate another goodbye experience of our deployments. And she essentially cried for 5 hours on like a scale of 1 to 10 at a nine, probably. for a very long time and mourned all of that and mourned some of her child stuff and other things that have happened in her life and softened her a lot. She had built up quite a wall and yeah, it opened her up, it opened me up to the things that the therapist was trying to get us to implement and yeah, it made a huge difference.
What do you see most often when veterans go through this experience?
Initially, there's the glow, right? And I try to I try to talk them down on that as much as I can because I know how that feels and I know how it's usually perceived and I know that it isn't going to last. And if they're not prepared for that, it can be very disappointing and frustrating and even become a loop of avoidance where they start to avoid anything that brings them down, right? And then that's isolating and they just need to understand. So initially, there's a lot of, I feel amazing. I feel so good. Thank you so much. And then it's, okay, awesome. Now let's start working through what's going to come up because things are still like your life is still there. The habits are still there. Those narratives are still in your mind, right? You're getting a buffer. It's going to last a couple of weeks. But as things come up there, it may actually feel worse than it did before, right? You're closer to the feelings and the emotions than you were last week when you had all the walls and you had all the numbness and you were miserable, but it was held back. Now it's going to be surface level and you may feel raw. And it's helping guys really understand like there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't fail at integration, right? When people call me and they're like, immigration is amazing. I feel so good. I'm like, I wonder if they're really doing it honestly, or you haven't reached the point of the real work, right? That's coming because that shit sucks. It's awful. It's uncomfortable, and it's sitting with all of that discomfort that works you through it. And so, trying to prepare them for that.
What do you feel like actually changes for them?
A lot of times, it's small stuff. It kind of depends. Like the first time, I don't think it's realistic to expect a huge life change. You're going to notice little things, right? That drink that you used to get, that monster, makes you feel like shit now, right? Little things of healthier habits, integrate those into your life. And there's no right or wrong. Like, don't feel guilty. Don't feel shame. It's information. Okay. Now this makes you feel bad. Alcohol's a big one. A lot of guys like, dude, I don't want to drink anymore. And I'm like, that's okay. Don't. You don't have to, you know. No one's gonna make you. I see a lot of little things, a lot of reconnection with their kids, a reorientation of that, forgiveness of parents has been a big one for a lot of guys, and forgiveness of themselves. Sometimes this stuff's really heavy. You know, guys experience things, did things that they're ashamed of, and being present with them while they work through that is it's tough work, but it's cool. It's really great to see someone come through the other side of an event when they can't get through a conversation when they show up. They can't look you in the eye, and you know that that dude's really, really on his last rung. And then to have a light come back and them enjoy their kids again and enjoy their life again and tell you that they actually love themselves. And one of the questions I asked one of the last groups before we left was like, last question before everybody's gone. And I text the group as we're all rolling out. And I was like, if you had to make a list of all the things or all the people that you love in your life, how long would it take you to write yourself? And I'm like, ah, fuck, I never would have thought. He's like, I wouldn't have been on it at all, you know? I was like, I know, me either. You know, I never would have, but it's time to, right? It's time to start treating yourself that way. And so that's probably the biggest thing is there's a little bit of shift, just enough that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And then the work, right?
When do you think someone's ready for this work?
I think that it has a unique ability to help you work through a plateau, particularly when guys are stuck. I have that conversation pretty often where they know that they're stuck. They know that they're in a loop. They know that they're struggling and they just can't break through it. And they want to. And they're ready to face whatever comes up. Then, okay, yeah, you may be ready for that because it does bring an intensity in. It doesn't give you an immediate relief. Like it's one of the stories that I like is bison, the difference between bison and cattle. Have you heard that? Where cattle will run from the blizzard or run from a winter storm, and because they run from it, they get stuck in it and they die. While the bison turn and walk together through the storm because one, their fur works in that direction. If they're facing away, it blows up and it makes them cold, so they face into the storm, but it also shortens the amount of time that they're in it because they're walking through the storm until they get to the other side. And I think that there's some value in that as a metaphor of not running from the things, the discomfort and the problems, but saying, I'm ready to face it now. And whatever it is, I need to face it because running's not working. And I see that. Then, yeah, they're ready to start doing some work and build some capacity and gain some understanding and see if this will help them.
What do you feel like you uncovered the most with a lot of the vets that you work with?
I think most of it's childhood stuff, really. I think a lot of it, sometimes it's dudes dealing with things from the war, but most of the time it's not. And I've heard some really interesting statistics and some predictions because it's not a statistic that I think is widely talked about, but the number of or the amount of child abuse within the ranks of the military, that often drives people toward service in a lot of ways. One, they're trying to get away from, possibly a negative situation or a bad home life, but also experiencing that vulnerability and that fear as a child and never wanting to feel that again. So I'm going to become this thing that I see, this SEAL, this recon guy, this soldier that's massive strength and muscles and guns. And like that guy must not be afraid of anything. I'm going to be that guy, right? And and it's a shell, it's an armor that they build up and we carry it through our service and then that little kid comes out afterward and we get to face him again. You know? That's usually what happens. A lot of kid stuff, a lot of feeling love for the first time. As an adult, that can be pretty special.
How have things changed for you, the way you live now?
It's restructured the framework that I've tried to do everything with. One of the messages that I got was our purpose here is to figure out love. And I talk to my boys about it. And I tell them that that's what you're here to do. And it's not loving your friends that you like. That's easy. It's loving the people that you don't like. That's hard. And that's the test of it. Have you really learned it? Can you love someone that you don't even like? And I never would have ever thought to even talk to my children about that. Or would have I've talked, it's and so it's changed, particularly the book has changed a lot of my understanding and how I deal with people, and that I'm not always dealing with the person, I'm dealing with the nervous system. And that's been trained. And when their reaction to a moment that we're in doesn't fully make sense, I know that I'm not dealing with the reaction of that moment. I'm dealing with the reaction from something that happened to them a long time ago. And that helps me have compassion. And if they're interested in figuring it out or working through it, I'm happy to help them with that too. But yeah, it's changed a lot. The way I parent, especially. I see a lot of the shit I was doing and can't raise your kids like they're Marines. It's fucking stupid.
Why did you feel the need to write a book?
5 years of frustration. um, from stepping on this journey and being kind of the guidance that I got, and then the gap was really what I was trying to fill. And so this last year, I helped out with a number of different events around, and noticed a lot of the same problems, right? Guys gaming it and showing up drinking or not doing any of the work or and it really being confusing. Like, why would you do that? Why would you show up and not be committed to this? Because it was free? Because you thought it was just going to be fun? Like what was the problem? And so it was a lot of that. And so I sat down with like 40 different books and PDFs about trauma and psychedelics and healing and all of these books. And I threw them into chat and I was like, this is what's happening. Help me understand it because it's a problem. And behind every door was 10 more. And I was like, okay, well, now this is what's happening. Well, what's happening here? And it's like, well, what's real integration? What is something that I could actually do in a moment? And it just started breaking all this stuff down. I was like, based off of this book, tell me what I should do here. I was like, compare the and contrast what this one's saying versus that one. I don't want you to cover up the contradictions. I want to highlight them and explain them and understand them. And it just spiraled, right? And at the end of it was this labyrinth of a mess. And I'm like, holy fuck. And I'm sending these back and forth to my friends. And I'm like, this is an integration guide in the moment. Have you ever seen anything like this? And he's sending stuff back to me. And he's like, no, this is another. And I'm like, holy crap. And so we were having just all of these epiphanies, one after another, sending it to all these different people in this space. And it's like, people need to hear this. And so it started with just creating a curriculum of explaining integration to people that we would support and be like, here, now you can just read this, right? And then it spiraled into this is going to become step one of the buy-in, right? We talked about why are they doing this? And it's because they were programmed by the military in a system that was completely indifferent to extract as much value as you can and risk the least amount of effort as possible. And that was survival in the military. You had to do that. Units had to do that to survive, right? You don't sign up for every working party. You'll never go to bed, right? They ask for help and everyone looks at their feet and waits to see who gets picked. Um, and so, but that type of mentality doesn't work in healing. You're not going to game your nervous system. Boot camp mattered. It was 3 months worth of work, right? And the title you got at the end of it was meaningful because you did a fuck ton of work to earn that. Not only does it the work you did, but the sacrifices that you made of other things you could have been doing, right? You could have been in college. You gave that up. You could have got married or whatever that. And so there's all this nervous system buy-in that adds value aside of money that I didn't understand. And so in learning about that, I've helped these other retreats start to form a buy-in that doesn't create a barrier of financial entry because a lot of guys are struggling with money. But it does create a nervous system buy-in so that when they're there, they treat it with the importance that it needs to have. And so the step one is you have to read the book. If you're not willing to read that, then we can't have an educated conversation. And so once you've done that, we'll continue. And you'll know more than most people. And you'll be able to decide, do I want to do this or do I not? Because the integration work's all there. The medicine doesn't require it, right? Um, and then if they're unwilling to sit down and read a book, then they're looking for a pill. They're not really looking. It took months to create a soldier. You're not going to fix that in a weekend, right? It takes repetition, it takes intensity, it takes intention, it takes time, it takes training, but there's no curriculum for it. It's the whole fourth phase of training that nobody ever gets. How to become a civilian again, how to expand your capacity to recognize safety, not just threat, so that we're not sitting in traffic or at a concert bugging out, thinking that there's got to be a threat here. And we can play with our kids again. And so that became the first step. And then the big one that's actually the most fun that uh, the real buy-in, because you don't know if they fast, right? You don't know if they quit drinking or quit dipping or quit smoking or do any of the shit you ask them to do. They can show up, you can drug test them, okay, but what was their real commitment? And so the actual buy-in is the first night that they arrive at that retreat was they make them spend the night in the woods alone. And so they get a sleeping bag and a pillow and a fire and a water bottle and none of the support system that they're used to pulling on. They don't get their phone. They don't get dip or alcohol or their spouse or anybody to distract. They have to sit alone in the quiet, bored, anxious, uncomfortable, and manage that for 12 hours until sunrise. You can go to sleep. You don't have to stay awake. It's not intended to be painful or torturous. It's just sit. And can you regulate whatever comes up? And then we come together in the morning around the fire as a group back to safety. So their nervous system experiences the full cycle of into threat, into unknown, into discomfort, regulates himself through it, and then comes back to safety and completes that cycle. And some people may have never done that intentionally with the awareness that that's what their nervous system was experiencing. And if they can't do that, that's okay too. But you probably shouldn't get 5 grams of mushrooms and an eye mask if quiet and alone is too much. And so that's how you tell.
So where do you see this going from here?
I like the work. I intend to continue to support people that are interested and want to do this stuff. Um, we have to navigate the legalities of it is the problem right now. And so what states can we go do these things in? What's the risk? Um, and trying to be a positive influence on it and make it, I don't know. I'm definitely enjoying it and I want to continue, but I don't know what's going to happen, really. There's a lot of money getting pushed into this industry. And once that starts happening, legislation follows and monopolies show up. So I kind of feel like the quieter and the smaller and the better that it's filtered, the longer it'll work and the more impactful it'll be.
If a veteran is watching this and struggling, what would you want them to hear?
Treat it like another phase of military training because that's exactly what it is, right? You're not going to go through the intentional training and the years of cementing it into your nervous system as an identity. You're not going to shift back overnight, right? One of the stories I like to tell is Mojave Viper. It's a pre-deployment training that we would have to do in the early 2000s. And they didn't know what to do with the snipers. So they made us the Op 4, the opposition force. We were pretending to be the insurgents. And so we were in a mountain town, and I picked up a big rock and threw it down the stairs and yelled grenade and watched all the guys dive out the windows and laughed, right? Idiots. It was a rock, right? And then the next group was like, let's go get 10 more rocks. We're going to fuck with these guys. But what I was exploiting in that moment was their nervous systems. That was a survival mechanism. React, don't think, react. This is how you stay alive. And it takes time and repetition and intensity of someone screaming in your face and making you do the reps. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down, like all the things, all the reps to burn that in. And it's going to take time to unwind it, right? And you've been trained to recognize threat and threat alone to the point that you're not just looking for it, you believe it's there. You're just looking for proof. And when you can't find it, it's overwhelming sometimes. I know it's got to be there. Where is it? I can't find it. And that was a lot. And I didn't understand that that's what was happening. And so now that I do, there is a process for retraining your nervous system, recognizing threat and safety, right? They're both there. And when can you rest in safety and when do you need to switch it on for threat, right? I still carry, but I can play with my kids now. And so that's the change that it's opened up is that that's the expansion of coming home. When am I safe and can I actually rest and be safe right now? and be grateful for it. Gratitude's a big one for doing that, and it's misconstrued as like this happiness overwrite, and that's not how you use it. You use it in real safety, in real moments, to expand your awareness and your nervous system to rest and to recognize it. And so those are the kinds of things that I tried to teach in that book, right? Don't game it. If you're gonna game it, do it with the work, right? The work matters. Just because you got it for free, like, okay, well then what am I gonna put on the table here to make this matter, right? And not something you already want to give up. It's got to be something that in the back of your mind you hope they won't tell you to give up. But it also can't be so heavy that you collapse and you're not able to complete the training. So there's a fine line, and it's all what I try to discuss in that book is these layers deeper, right? Like don't just show up, like understand what's happening in your body. It matters. Do some work, even if they don't make you. I had one of the guys go to a retreat. He rented a place by himself in the woods just to detach from electronics for 2 days before he got there. I was like, dude, that's fucking great. He's like, who told you to do that? He's like, nobody. I needed this to matter. I'm like, fuck yeah. Now that's going to be night one.
To wrap things up, any last words?
Mostly just that you're not broken. There's not some permanent malfunction that you're going to have to endure for the rest of your life. That message, I think, takes lives. And it's not correct, right? There's a lot of things you may have to work through. There's a lot of health stuff. You may need to get your hormones checked. You may need to change your diet, start working out. Those things are important too. But yeah, it's just a retraining. And you can do it. We're all doing it to some degree. But there's an actual roadmap that makes sense. And yeah, lean on your community as well. Everybody's going through it. It's crazy how when you sit down and have a personal conversation, everyone's life is struggling. It's life. And so don't be afraid to reach out. I was. I didn't want to talk to anyone I didn't think was not in the same boat that I was. And luckily I had a friend that I knew was struggling too, and we kind of leaned on each other through that and helped each other. So look into it. Look into it. There's a lot of information, and there's a lot of charities trying to help. And if you can't afford those things, keep asking around. There's a lot of people doing good work that aren't taking vacations to Fiji.